بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah, welcome back to another lesson of Mastering Tarkeeb. Inshallah, today we want to cover Al-Mubtada'u, the nominal subject. This is the noun that generally appears at the beginning of a sentence. And in terms of the two main components, it is considered to be the musnad ilay, the main subject in the sentence. That means after this noun, we will see that there will be a word which forms to become the khabar, and that is known as musnad. So in terms of the two main components, al-mubtada will be musnadun ilay, the subject of the sentence, but because it's come at the beginning, we will call it nominal subject, al-mubtada. So let's get started, inshallah. So here at the top, we have al-mubtada'u, the nominal subject, the noun that comes generally at the beginning of a sentence. And here we have the different forms of al-mubtada'u. So inshallah, we will want to cover several forms of al-mubtada'u. Probably we'll be looking at about 45 different forms of al-mubtada'u. So the first one is al-ismu al-zahir, an apparent noun. So the mubtada appears as an apparent noun. So let's look at an example. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Allahu ahadun, which translates as Allah is one. So we can see that when a noun comes at the beginning of a sentence, the label we give in terms of grammar is mubtada'un. In terms of the two main components, it will be considered to be musnad ilay. So the word Allah is an apparent noun. So this will be known as mubtada'un, and ahadun will be the khabar. And these two will group together and become a complete sentence, because when we say Allahu ahadun, someone can understand from this a complete meaning, that Allah is one. So it's a complete sentence, or jumla ismiya because it started with a noun, so the word Allah, and khabriya because it is providing information. It does not fall under any of the qism of jumla insha'iyya. So Allah is one. The mubtada here has come in the form of an apparent noun. Next, we have mubtada coming in the form of al-dhamir al-munfasilu, detached pronoun. So it's still a noun because pronouns stand in place of proper nouns. So let's look at an example. In the Quran also we find this sentence, Ana nadhirun. This was mentioned by the prophets. I am a warner. Ana nadhirun. So we can see here, let's get the translation down. I am a warner. So we can see in English as well, the red signifies the mubtada, and in Arabic, it's the word ana. So here is still a noun at the beginning of a sentence, but here the mubtada has come in the form of dhamir munfasilun. So ana will be mubtada'un, and that will leave nadhir to be the khabar. And generally, we must understand that mubtada is generally ma'rifah. It is definite. So from the grammar books, we've understood that there are 7 things that can be considered to be ma'rifah. One of them is pronouns. The other one, which we commonly understand, is when the word has al at the beginning. So if someone says al-baytu jadidun, the house is new, we can see that the mubtada has the word al. But that's not the only way a word can be definite. It can also be definite by using the demonstrative pronouns like hadha, the relative pronouns like alladhi, etc. So now this will complete the sentence, the mubtada and khabar. So when we say ana nadhirun, it's a complete sentence. It's ismiya because it started with a noun, pronoun ana, and it's khabriyatun because it's informative. Okay, so now let's move on to our next form, inshallah. So we have our next form of mubtada, which is ismul istifham, interrogative noun. Interrogative noun. So Let's look at an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Qari'ah in the second verse. So the first verse is Al-Qari'atu, the second verse is Mal Qari'atu, which means what is the striking event? So ma means what, Al-Qari'atu means the striking event. So we can see here that the word ma is ismul istifham. It's an instrument, an article used to question, but it's a noun. Because it's a noun, it can take the role of mubtada'un. And that will leave al-qari'atu to become the khabar. Now, a few things to note here. Number one is we can see here that the ma is used to question. Not all items and articles that are used to question can take the role of mubtada'un. It has to be a noun. So if we are asking a question by using the article of questioning or interrogative articles like hal. So if somebody says hal indaka kitabun, do you have a book with you? The word hal there cannot take the role of mubtada'un because hal is harfu istifham. That the same thing will apply to the word hamza, the word a. So if somebody says a anta talib, are you a student? So the word a cannot take the role of mubtada because it's harfu istifham. So not all instruments and articles of questioning are can be considered to be mubtada'un. It has to be a noun for it to be considered to be mubtada'un. So here it's a noun. Ma, what. Okay, and that leaves al-qari'ah to become the khabar. Now, like we mentioned in the previous slide, khabar generally is nakiratun, indefinite. However, it can still sometimes come as definite. So it's got al here because there's a stress here. What is the striking one? So it adds emphasis. Now this becomes a sentence, jumla. Ismiya because it started with a noun, the ma, ismul istifham. Insha'iyya because it falls under one of the types of jumlatun insha'iyatun, which is istifham. Let's move on to our next one. The fourth form of mubtada is ma at-ta'jibiyya. Ma which comes to express amazement and astonishment. So let's look at an example. Ma ahsana Muhammadan. Ma ahsana Muhammadan. Literally means how beautiful is Muhammad. Sorry, the meaning is how beautiful is Muhammad, but literally it means what made Muhammad beautiful. How's that? We'll break that grammatically and you will inshallah understand. The main thing here is the mubtada has come in the form of a ma which comes to express amazement and astonishment. So ma ahsana Muhammadan. So let's break this down. Ma here will be considered mubtada'un because in essence this is actually a question denoting expression. So what has made Muhammad beautiful? In other words, how beautiful is Muhammad? So ma is mubtada'un. Now in ahsana is from ahsana yuhsinu ihsanan is fi'lun madin. It means to perfect or to beautify. So ahsana is fi'lun madin. The fa'il is inside, which is huwa, and Muhammadan is the maf'ul bihi. So in the phrase ahsana Muhammadan, we actually have three words. The verb ahsana, the fa'il which is huwa inside, and Muhammadan maf'ul bihi. Now this will all group together and form to become the khabar of ma. So what has made Muhammad beautiful? And by the way, the fa'il inside ahsana, which is huwa, it refers back to the ma. Because when you have a khabar in the form of a sentence, there has to be a pronoun which refers generally back to the mubtada'un. And in this case, it's inside the word ahsana. Now, from the grammar books, we know that there's two forms and sighas of expressing ta'ajjub, amazement. One is أفعل به, and the second one is ما أفعله. So if we want to use this in the second form, it'll be أحسن بمحمد, which will still translate is how beautiful is Muhammad. This is one of the forms of فعل تعجب. So ما أحسن زيدا, how beautiful is Muhammad. When we break this sentence down grammatically, the ma will be actually ismu istifham, mubtada'un. And then what has made Muhammad beautiful? You'll have the fa'il, fa'il, maf'ul bihi. That will form to be the khabar. And then together we can say it's jumlatun ismiyatun insha'iyatun. Complete sentence. Ismiyatun because it started with a noun, ma. So we did say that this ma in essence is what? Isma istifham. Or you could say it's ma ta'jibiyatun, takes the role of mubtada'un. And it's insha'iyatun, considered to be a non-informative sentence because when you bring a sentence as amazement and astonishment, fi'lu ta'ajjub, it's considered to be jumla insha'iyya. Next, we have another form of mubtada, which is al-masdar al-mu'awwal, the interpreted masdar, root word. Now, we have this verse of the Quran, أَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ. Obviously, it says خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, but I've just shortened it so we can concentrate on the part we need to concentrate on. أَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ. What does this translate as? Your fasting is better. Your fasting. Now we'll come to the part why we translate it as your fasting, because that normally would be صِيَامُكُمْ خَيْرٌ. But how do we get to the conclusion of the translation of your fasting? That's because of the an-masdariyya. So let's break this down in terms of tarkeeb. Okay, an is harfun masdariyun. An is a particle that changes the verb after it into the meaning of masdar. So let me repeat that again. An is a particle that changes the verb after it into the meaning of masdar. So the root word meaning you're fasting. So that's why it's known as harfun masdariyun. Next we have is the verb, which is tasumu. So inside tasumu we have the fi'lun mudari'un mansub. It's mansub because of an. And where's the fa'il? The waw. The waw al-jama'a is the fa'il. So we just mentioned it briefly because the tarkeeb goes on a bit more. So to shorten, we just said fi'l tasumu, but inside there's also the fa'il. Oh, we mentioned the fa'il there. The fa'il is al-waw. Now all this tasumu and tasumu will group together and become the interpreted root word. Now, what's the interpretation going to be? صِيَامُكُمْ. Now, you might want to get a pen and paper to write this down because it will be helpful. When we have harfun masdariyun, by the way, an is not the only harfun masdariyun. Ma can come as harfun masdariyun as well. There are other words as well which are mentioned, anna as well, etc. Hamzatu taswiya. سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم. But we don't want to go into all that. What you want to write down here is how would you interpret the verb after it into the meaning of masdar. So your first step is, probably might want to annotate this. Okay. So let's put a text box here. The first thing we want to do is identify the masdar of the verb. That's your first step. How do we interpret the verb after it into the meaning of masdar? So the first step is identify the masdar of the verb. Okay. So where do we want to put this? Let's just put it down here. That's your first step. Your second step is, step 2 is make the fa'il, I'm just going to do in English, مضاف to the masdar. 2 simple steps and you will be able to interpret the masdar meaning. So number 2 is make the file mudaf to the masdar. So let's just get down what we have in terms of the 2 steps here. So our first step, we will have the word siyam. Yeah, so siyam plus kum. The reason why I'm saying kum is because when you say tasumu, the fa'il is plural masculine second person. Because when you say you fast, you're addressing a group of males. So it's second person and it's plural. Plural masculine second person. So now when we bring that fa'il, which is the waw inside tasumu, when we bring that out of the verb and want to make it as mudaf ilay, then the word that matches in terms of dhamir majroor muttasil will be the word kum. Because in tasumu is dhamir marfu. So when it's dhamir marfu, we're going to leave it as tasumu. But however, now we want to take that pronoun out and make it mudaf towards a masdar. So it's no longer dhamir marfu, it's going to become majroor. So that's why we put in the word kum. So siyam plus kum equals siyamukum. Okay, so that's how we interpret the masdar mu'awwal. So coming back to here again, what causes all this? The word an, harfun masdariyun. So that's why now in translation we're saying you're fasting, siyamukum, you're fasting. So this whole thing, the masdar mu'awwal, siyamukum, will become mubtada'un. And that will leave the word khayrun to become khabar. And obviously in the Quran you have the word lakum, so the prepositional phrase you can make it muta'alliq towards the word khayrun. So your fasting is better for you. An tasumu khayrun lakum. So notice here the mubtada here, it's not your normal ismun zahirun, an apparent noun. It came in the form of masdar mu'awwal. And then this will become a jumla because it's a sentence. An tasumu khayrul lakum, i.e. siyamukum khayrul lakum. Ismiya because started with a noun. So because, and yes, it's harfun masdariyun, but the verb after it was interpreted as a masdar, mu'awwal, siyamukum. So when we look at the word siyamukum, it's a noun. So that's why this sentence will be known as jumla ismiyatun. And because it's informative, it'll be known as khabariyatun. So I hope that makes sense. Inshallah, we want to go slow, so it's easy to understand what we are covering and inshallah what I am saying, rather than rushing the course, inshallah. Anyone who is interested in the full course can log on to the website, so Sidra Institute, www.sidrainstitute.com, and you can enroll into the course and have access to all previous recordings, and inshallah you can benefit from the course. And anybody who's interested in other courses as well, we have the full mastering Arab course, so how do the Arabic diacritic works, and we also have on the website mastering Arabic rhetoric course. So that's the full Arabic rhetoric course, Balagha, covering Ilmul Ma'ani, Ilmul Bayan, and Ilmul Badi, all packed with exercises, summaries, etc., PowerPoint lessons. So if anybody wants to benefit from that, that is on the website as well. Okay, so let's carry on, inshallah. Next we have is another form of Mubtada which is Ismul Ishara. What is Ismul Ishara? Demonstrative pronouns. So pronouns that are used to point at things. Okay, so we want to remove that for the time being. So Mubtada can come in the form of Ismul Ishara. So notice we said the word Ism. So it's a noun. Demonstrative pronoun. So in the Quran we see this هذه تذكرة, which means this is a reminder. هذه تذكرة. The word هذه is مبتدأ and تذكرة is the khabar. So notice here it's not your normal apparent noun like البيت جديد, الله أحد. It's a demonstrative pronoun. So if demonstrative pronouns come at the beginning of a sentence, they can take the role of مبتدأ, and then you will have the khabar after it. And this becomes a complete sentence. جملة اسمية خبرية. Next we have is that the mubtada is compounded as a demonstrative pronoun phrase. Al-Murakkabāt الإشاري. So we don't just have the demonstrative pronoun. Another word is attached to it, and together with the musharun ilay, it will group together to become mubtadaun. So let's look at this example. هذا الدرس سهل. هذا الدرس سهل. This translates as this lesson is easy. This lesson is easy. I hope this lesson is easy. Okay. So what's happening here is هذا will be اسم الإشارة. الدرس will be مشار إليه. This will group together and become مبتدأ. And that will leave سهل to be the khabar. This lesson is easy. The one thing to note here is if the word after هذا has al, like in this case, الدرس. So after هذا, the next word has al, then that as a whole phrase will take the role of مبتدأ. So let me repeat that again. If after the word هذا, the next word has al, then that won't be considered a complete sentence. It will be a part of a sentence. It'll be just a phrase, this lesson. And that will group together to become مبتدأ. If the sentence read هذا درس سهل, the translation will also change. That will mean this is an easy lesson. This is an easy lesson. In that case, هذا will be مبتدأ, درس will be منعوت, and سهل will be نعت. And the منعوت نعت, درس سهل will be the khabar. But because the word after هذا has got al, that means this is part of the ismul ishara. So it becomes inseparable. It becomes part of the phrase, the demonstrative phrase. هذا الدرس, this lesson. And that's why we're breaking it down as هذا is ismul ishara, الدرس is musharun ilay, and it becomes mubtada'un. Sahlun is the khabar. And this will group together to become jumla, so a sentence. Ismiya because it started with a noun, هذا, and khabriyatun because it's informative. One thing to note here as well, I normally prefer these kind of grammatical structures to be broken down as هذا is mubdalun min, and ad-dars to be the badal. Why? Because when you look at it in terms of the i'rab, ad-dars is marfu with a dhamma. Why is ad-dars marfu with a dhamma? We cannot say because mushar ilay of hada. Nowhere in the marfu'at do we see, or mansubat or majrurat or tawabi, that a word is marfu because mushar ilay. So to understand why ad-dars is marfu with a dhamma, it makes sense saying ad-dars is the badal, a positional substitute for hada, which is mubdalun min. And we covered this in one of our few lessons right at the beginning when we covered phrases. What's badal? When you switch it around with the other word mentioned before, the reference is the same. So if we were to say هذا سهل, this is easy, referring to the lesson, it still refers to the lesson. If you remove هذا and just say الدرس سهل, the lesson is easy, it's still referring to the same thing, the lesson. So when we see this kind of structure, اسم الإشارة followed by al, the اسم الإشارة will be known as مبدل من, not مبدل من, مبدل من, commonly read as مبدل من, is from إبدال, not تبديل. So هذا will be known as مبدل من, and الدرس will be the بدل. That explains better why it's مرفوع الضمة, because بدل follows the إعراب of the مبدل من. In this case, the مبدل من is هذا, which is مرفوع because مبتدأ, but it's just that the إعراب is not expressed because هذا is a مبني word. But الدرس, you can express the إعراب because it's a معرب word. So let's move on to our next one, number 8. The مبتدأ can be compounded as with a relative pronoun. So المركب الموصولي. So when we say murakkab here, what's happening is now the mubtada is going to be compounded, so it'll become part of the sentence, and then after that you will have a khabar. Okay, so when we understand mubtada being compounded, it actually broadens our horizon in terms of looking at sentences from the bigger picture, rather than looking at, when we look at extensive sentences, longer sentences, we don't get taken back and think, where's the mubtada? Is it one word? Where's the khabar? We understand the structure of the sentence is actually broad, it's big, it's long, and the mubtada could be compounded, and the khabar has probably come after. Okay, so let's look at an example. ما عند الله باق. ما عند الله باق. So what is with Allah remains. ما عند الله, what is with Allah, باق, remains. So here, the ma here is ismun mawsulun, relative pronoun. And then عند الله is the clause. We know from the grammar books that when you have ismun mawsulun, a relative pronoun, so those words that give the meaning of the one or that or which, it has a sentence that comes after it, which is known as jumlatus sila, the relative clause. So the relative clause here is عند الله. That which is found to be with Allah, baqin, it remains. So let's break this down. Ma is ismun mawsulun, it's a relative pronoun. عند الله is mudaf mudaf ilayh. Okay, so instead of breaking it down, by Allah, with Allah, this becomes connected to a fi'l which is hidden, which is yujadu. That is, which is to be found by Allah, with Allah. Whenever we have zarf, we can also make that muta'alliq. Now, we can't make it muta'alliq to ma because it's a noun. It's ismun mawsulun. So we have to assume the jumlatus sila, the relative clause, to be hidden, which is yujadu. So indallahi, which is zarf makan, by Allah, with Allah, adverb of place. And adverbs of place, we connect them to verbs. So the verb here is not mentioned, so we'll assume yujadu, that which is to be found by Allah. So yujadu indallahi will become the relative clause, jumlatus sila. Now, when we look at it now, the mawsul, ismun mawsulun, with the jumlatus sila will group together and become mubtada'un. I know people will say that ma is just a mubtada and the rest is just, a sentence, la mahalla laha min al-i'rab, because it's jumlatus sila. That's valid as well. But in this course, what we want to do is we just want to construct the sentence as a whole. So strictly speaking, ma, yes, is just a mubtada. Indallahi is really not the mubtada. But because we're doing the course of Tarkeeb, we're constructing the sentences, what we want to do is we want to show where, the mubtada, how is it compounded, and then that leaves the khabar to be mentioned in isolation. So we can see where the khabar is, and where the mubtada starts from, and the words that are compounded with the mubtada. So normally, what I would normally say is ismun mawsulun is a mubtada, but jumlatul sila along with it forms the mubtada. So it's not mubtada on its own. Indallahi, it just forms to become the mubtada. Okay. So here, ma indallahi, that which is with Allah. The mubtada here has come as a relative pronoun construct. Al-Murakkabul mawsuliyu. And that leaves the word baqin to become the khabar. Now one may think that why is baqin is khabar, why is it not marfu? Because the word baqin is ismun manqusun, like the word qadin. And from the grammar books we know that when we have words which are ismun manqus, like qadin, what is ismun manqus? A noun that has ya before it, ya sakin before it a kasra. So al-qadi, al-baqi. The only thing is when you remove the al, you can't see the ya sakin before it a kasra. So it's assumed. So when you add the word al to the word baqin, it'll be al-baqi. The ya comes back, the ya sakin, preceded by a kasra is known as ismun manqus. These type of words, in the state of raf, the dhamma will be hidden. So in other words, it was baqiyun. But because obviously we don't say that because it's heavy on the tongue, it became baqin. Like if someone says a judge came, ja'a qadin. You don't say ja'a qadiyun. Ja'a qadin. So that's why we see that this word, even though it's khabar, is baqin. These words, by the way, in the state of nasb, the fatha will be apparent, so baqiyan, qadiyan, etc. In the state of jar, it'll be kasra muqaddara as well. So if somebody was to say marartu bi qadin, I pass by a judge. Now, this becomes a complete sentence because we can understand something complete, which is what is with Allah remains, it's everlasting, it's ismiya because it started with a noun, and more specifically, a relative pronoun. Ismun mawsulun is khabariyatun because it is informative. Next we have is that the mubtada is again a relative pronoun, but it has been delayed. So that means it's shifted from its normal position. So the mubtada has become mu'akhar. That means we're going to have the khabar coming before. So let's look at an example in the Quran as well. أَقَرِيبٌ مَا تُوعَدُونَ. أَقَرِيبٌ مَا تُوعَدُونَ, which translates, is that which you are promised is near. So in other words, we are saying, is near that which you have been promised. So in other words, مَا تُوعَدُونَ قَرِيبٌ. That which you have been promised is near. So we can see here in this verse of the Quran that the mubtada has been delayed, it's come after, and it's come in the form of mawsul, ismun mawsul with the relative clause jumlatus sila. So let's break this sentence down in terms of tarkeeb. We have hamza, which is harful istifham. So notice here, as we mentioned before, in mal qari'atu, the ma was able to take the role of mubtada because it was ismul istifham. Here, hamza is not ismul istifham. Hamza, the a and hal, they are not deemed to be particles. That's why they can't take the role of mubtada. So hamza is harful istifham. Qareeb would be the khabar muqaddam. Okay, one way to notice this khabar muqaddam because it's indefinite. It's got no word. It hasn't got the word al. Is a mubtada definite? Yes, it is, because ismun mawsul is one of those constructs that's considered to be ma'rifah, like ismul ishara. So ma, let's break this down. Ma is ismun mawsulun. Ma is ismun mawsulun. Then we have the word tu'adun, which you have been promised. So we have the fail mudari in this instance, majhul, because it's in the passive voice, you have been promised. Then we have the naibul fa'il, which is the waw. Okay, ma tu'adun. Now the fail plus the naibul fa'il will group together and become the relative clause, jumlatus sila. Because when we use relative pronouns like that, which, or those, we have a sentence that comes after it, which is known as jumlatus sila, the relative clause. And that could be jumla fi'liya, by the way, or jumla ismiya. Like in the Quran, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ, we have the ismun mawsul, hum fi salatihim khashi'un. So there is jumla ismiya. So coming back to this sentence, the mawsul sila now, ismun mawsul plus the jumlatus sila is going to group together and become the delayed mubtada, the delayed nominal subject. And then when we group this together, it becomes a complete sentence. It's ismiyatun because, yes, technically speaking, it has started with a noun, ma tu'adun, but it's just been delayed. It's just been delayed. Why? Because the emphasis is on the word near. Okay, so if it was to be brought, ama tu'aduna qaribun, that would be a general sentence. But is that which you've been promised? Is it near? A qaribun? Ma tu'adun? So we can see that the stress is on the word qarib by advancing it before the mubtada. So technically speaking, it still is ismiyatun, and we will definitely want to take it into consideration the hamza harful istifham, and it's insha'iyatun because it does not fall under, it falls under one of the jumla insha'iyas, non-informative sentence, and in this case is istifham. Next we have the mubtada coming as al-Murakkabul Idafiyu. It's compounded as a possessive phrase. So mudaf, mudaf ilay. So here we have جزاؤهم مغفرة. جزاؤهم مغفرة. So their reward, جزاؤهم, is forgiveness. مغفرة. So we can see here that the mubtada here is being compounded with the word hum. So جزاء is mudaf, hum is mudaf ilay, and it'll group together and become mubtada'un. And like we mentioned before, strictly speaking, jaza is the word which is only mubtada, and hum is just mudaf ilay. But just for the sake of tarkeeb and compounding it and understanding that the mubtada has been compounded with other words, we just say mudaf mudaf ilay becomes mubtada'un. That leaves the word maghfiratun to become the khabar. To become the khabar. And then this will become a jumla sentence. Ismiyatun because it started with a noun, jaza'u in this case. Khabriyatun because it's informative. So this is the 10th form of mubtada'u. Next we have is al-murakkab an-na'tiyu. So descriptive compound. So the mubtada, okay, can come in the form of a descriptive phrase, in other words. So let's look at an example. Ar-Rasulul Kareem Aminun. Ar-Rasulul Kareem Aminun. The noble messenger is truthful or trustworthy. Probably trustworthy will be the better translation, because Sadiq is the translation for truthful, and Amin would be better translated as trustworthy. So you may want to change that in your notes, those who are taking notes. Ar-Rasulul Kareemu, the noble messenger, Aminun, is trustworthy. So here, the mubtada has been compounded with a description, a na'at. So let's break this down, inshallah. Ar-Rasul is man'ud. So the qualified noun, the word, the description and adjective referring to is known as man'ud in grammatical terms. The description and adjective itself is known as na'at. So Ar-Rasul al-Kareem. Now this descriptive phrase, man'ud and na'at, will group together and become mubtada'un. That will leave the word aminun to be the what? Khabar. To become the khabar. And then the mubtada plus the khabar will become a sentence, jumla, ismiya because it started with a noun, and khabriyatun because it's what? Informative. Jumlatun ismiyatun khabariyatun. So our 12th form of mubtada is an-nakiratu bina'atin muqaddarin. It's compounded, it's nakira, it's compounded as a descriptive phrase, but the description, the adjective, is actually hidden. كتاب أنزلناه, verse in the Quran. كتاب أنزلناه, which translates as a book we have revealed it. The reason why I put azimun in brackets is because the nat is omitted. Because in this sentence, we realize the word kitab is mubtada'un and anzalnahu is the khabar. Otherwise, if we don't assume kitabun to be the mubtada'un, then we've mentioned this, that if you have a nakira word, nakiratun word, which is a word which is indefinite, and you have a sentence after it, it will actually be man'ut and nat. So if we don't take azimun to be hidden and we just say kitabun anzalnahu, it will translate as a book which we have revealed. Then that won't be a complete sentence. However, in terms of tarkeeb, when we check the grammar books, the Arab kitabs, they mention kitab to be mubtada'un. So how can it be valid for the word kitab to be mubtada'un on its own? That's because the nat of kitabun is omitted, which is azimun. And that is signaled by the tanween in kitabun. Because we covered this in balagha, Arabic rhetoric, that the tanween can come for many, many reasons. One of the reasons is the tanween can come for ta'zeem, to glorify, magnify something. That means in that case, the sifat can be hidden. So if the tanween here is for ta'zeem, that means it infers kitabun azeemun. Now, how would this still be valid to be mubtada? Because it don't have al, it's not ma'rifah. Well, ma'rifah can become specific, close to become definite. And one way is when you bring the nat of a mubtada word, which is nakira, then that mubtada becomes specific and it becomes close to become indefinite, so it will take the same ruling. Like in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا عَبْدٌ مُؤْمِنٌ خَيْرٌ مِّن مُشْرِكٍ. A believing servant is better than a polytheist. So there, abdun mu'minun, believing servant. Why is it valid to make abdun mubtada'un, even though the word abd don't have al before it, it don't seem like it's definite? Because the adjective is mentioned after, which is mu'minun, it makes the word abd specific. Thus, it becomes close to becoming indefinite and it takes the same ruling. So when something becomes close to something, it takes its what? Ruling. Another example we can see in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, لَقِنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ, that do talqeen of those who are close to dying. That before they are going to depart from this world, slowly around them start reciting shahadatain. Do talqeen of the shahadatain. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. The two testimonies. Do talqeen. But the Prophet ﷺ used the word mawta, which means literally means dead. But because the ones who are dying, they're close to dying, they've given the name mawta. So when something is close to something, it takes its ruling and it takes its name. So kitabun azimun, the nat is assumed. That makes the word kitab specific. Now you know you're talking about a great book. It becomes close to become indefinite, ma'rifah, so it will take its ruling, and kitab can now take the role of mubtada'un. So here the main thing we was mentioning is the mubtada can be compounded with a nat which is hidden. That's why we're saying a great book, we have revealed it. It's a complete sentence. The sentence is not translating as a great book which we have revealed, because kitabun is not man'ut and anzalnahu is khabar in the nat in the form of a sentence. That is the khabar on its own. So kitabun is man'ut, azimun is nat, so a great book. The man'ut and nat will group together to become mubtada'un, and then anzalnahu, we have three words. The fa'il anzal, the fa'il which is the na, and the hu which is maf'ul bihi. Now all this will group together. The fa'il, fa'il and maf'ul bihi, all of it will group together and become the khabar of kitabun. Not the na'at, because kitabun azimun, kitab has been grouped with the word azim, which is assumed, and that has formed the mubtada. That has made it specific, and that leaves anzalnahu on its own to become the khabar. So we have examples like this in the Quran, like in the story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr alayhi salam. فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا. So they both found a servant from our servants. عَبْدًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا. So the word عَبْدًا there, the tanween is for ta'zim. Yani فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا عَظِيمًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا. They found a great servant from our servants. So you'll have this in a lot of places in the Quran, but the tanween don't always represent ta'zim. Okay, it can, denote tahqir as well. وَلَتَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَى حَيَاةٍ. And you will find them to be the most keen, okay, upon what? Life. That they want to live life forever. Hayatin, despicable life. So hayatin, haqiratin. So tanween can also come for tahqir. Many other reasons, which is covered in the Balagha course. So those who are interested in enrolling into mastering Balagha, this is all mentioned in there. 78 hours of content. Okay, so here it becomes a sentence. So kitabun anzalnahu has become a complete sentence. Ismiya because it starts with a noun, and khabriya because it is given information. Next, the mubtada can be al-murakkabul badaliyu. What that means is it's compounded with a badal. So that means there's two words mentioned. The reference of both are the same, is the same. The reference for both of the words is the same. So let's look at an example. Al-ustadhu Muhammadun shafiqun. The teacher Muhammad is kind, is caring. So when we look at the word the teacher and the word Muhammad, it's referring to the same entity, the same person. Whether we say the teacher is kind or Muhammad is kind, it's referring to the same entity. So this is what we call badal and mubdal min. And by the way, the second word will be known as badal, and the previous word before that will be known as mubdalun min, and they both have the same i'rab. That's why we're saying al-ustadhu Muhammadun. The only thing is that this is bi-dhammatin because of al, and this is bi-dhammatin because there's no al before the word Muhammad. So we can see that the mubtada is compounded as badaliyun, a positional substitute. There's another word which refers to the same entity as the word mentioned before. So let's break this down grammatically. Al-ustadhi will be mubdalun min. Okay, so let's correct that. I put down mubayyan, so that's a bit of a mistake there. I'm assuming the other one's probably wrong as well. So let's see what comes up on the other one. Let's actually correct this one first. Mubdalun min. Let's just put the dhamma on there so we know how we say it. Mubdalun min. Okay. And we can just put that in red as well. Okay. That will make the word Muhammad to be badal. So there's a bit of another mistake there. According to some grammarians, badal and atf bayan are the same thing. They don't make a distinction between atf bayan and badal, and some say there is a distinction, and they give an example that shows the difference. But we don't want to go into that. That's covered in Hidayatun Nah. Let's put down the word badal. So we need a text box here. and badal. Al-Ustad is mubdalun min, and Muhammad is the badal, is a substitute for the previous word. The reference of both is the same, and that will group together to become mubtada'un. To become mubtada'un, and I'll leave the word shafiq to become the khabar. So the teacher Muhammad, that's together, it groups together to become mubtada'un, but it consists of mubdal min and badal, and shafiqun is the khabar. And it becomes a sentence, so jumlatun, ismiyatun because it starts with a noun, and khabriyatun because it is informative. We have al-Murakkabul bayaniyu. I hope I've got this one right. So let's get rid of that. And let's see what we have on this slide. Okay, so now Murakkabun bayaniyun is a bit similar to badaliyun, but the only difference is the reference point of both of them is the same, but the focus is on the second word rather than the first word. So Abu Hafs Umar is a caliph. Abu Hafs Umar is a caliph. Now we can see here that we have the word Abu Hafs. The father of Hafs, meaning Hafsa, the ta has been omitted. Abu Hafsata, basically. So the father of Hafsa, Umar, is a caliph, khalifatun. So here, when we say Abu Hafs and we say the word Umar, the reference is the same, but the focus is on the word Umar, because there could be many people by the name of Kunya, agnomen of Abu Hafs, family name Abu Hafs. So when we say Umar, that is doing bayan. That's clarifying things up, clarifying things. So the difference between badal and atf bayan is the second word in badal is not actually the focus point. It's the word before. So when you say al-ustadhu Muhammad, the teacher Muhammad, shafiqun is caring, the stress is on the word al-ustadh. The focus point is the teacher. Muhammad is just mentioned extra. But when we use atful bayan, the focus is the second word. The first word is just mentioned, okay, as an additional information, but the main word focus point is the second word, which is Umar. Okay, so here al-ustadhu. Okay, so we have it boxed there. Okay, let me just rephrase actually. The focus point actually in Atful Bayan is actually the first word. So I want to take that back again. It just came to my mind. In Mubdal min and Badal, the focus is actually the second sentence, because when you look at the example, ضربت زيدا رأسه. Zayd, I hit his head. So the word Zaydan will be Mubdalun min, and رأسه, his head, which is Badal al-Ba'd, will be the focus. So in Badal, the second word is the main word. So when you say Al-Ustad Muhammadun Shafiqun, the teacher Muhammad is caring, the word Muhammad is the focus point. It's maqsood bizat. It's the main focus of the two. Whereas in Atful Bayan, the focus is actually the first one, Abu Hafs. Umar is just mentioned as additional, just to clarify, but it's not the main focus. So Abu Hafs would be the maqsood bizat, the intended word. Whereas in Badal, the second word would be maqsood bizat, the tabi, basically. And whereas in Atful Bayan, the matbu' would be maqsood bizat, the intended word. So just to clarify things, okay. So though that's mentioned in Hidayat now, the difference between Atful Bayan and Badal, okay. So anyway, coming back to this sentence, Al-Ustadh Muhammadun, the teacher Muhammad, sorry, Al-Ustadh, oh, sorry, we've got the wrong Tarkeeb there, okay. Abu Hafs mudaf ilay will become Mubayyan. So let's just correct that as well. There's quite a few mistakes today, right at the end. Okay, so Abu Hafs. Obviously, we know it's mudaf mudaf ilayh. Father of Hafsa, that is Mubayyan, and that'll make Umar to become Atful Bayan. Okay, so let's just digest what we said before. Atful Bayan is a word which comes to clear things up mentioned before, but it's not the main focus in this sentence. Okay, it's not the main focus of the two, but it still follows the i'rab. That's why Abu is marfu with a waw, Umar is marfu with dhamma, بضمة واحدة because ممنوع من الصرف. So Abu Hafs is Mubayyan, Umar will be the Atful Bayan, and they'll group together to become Mubtada'un, and they'll leave Khalifatun to become the Khabar. And then the Mubtada Khabar will group together, become Jumlatun Ismiyatun Khabariyatun. Becomes a sentence. It's Ismiyatun because it started with a noun, and Khabariyatun because it's informing. And just to mention before as well, let's just quickly go back to the previous slide. So we had here Al-Ustadu Muhammadun. Let's rub that off. Okay, and we had here just go back. Okay, we can't go back. So let's just put a shape here because it was Mubdal min and Badal. So let's just keep that out of the picture. Okay, so in here Al-Ustadu Muhammadun, the teacher Muhammad is caring. So this is Mubdal min Al-Ustadu, and Muhammad is the what Badal. The focus here will be Muhammad. The teacher Muhammad is caring. So Muhammad will be the focus point. That's the difference between Badal and Atful Bayan. In Badal, the second word is the focus point. So here Muhammad. In Atful Bayan, if you want to go back now to the example of Atful Bayan, okay, the focus would be Abu Hafs. The focus would be Abu Hafs. Umar is just there to clarify things. Okay. Let's just do one more, inshallah, and we'll conclude today's lesson. So another form of Mubtada is Murakkabut Ta'kidiyu. So it's a construct which consists of emphasis. So here we have Al-Hawdu kulluhu mamlu'un. The whole house is full. The whole house is full. Mamlu'un means full. So let's break this down. So let's get rid of those. Okay. So when we use the word kullu as emphasis, that means we've emphasized a word. So al-hawdu will be the emphasized word, so it'll be known as mu'akkad. They'll leave the word kulluhu, which consists of mudaf and mudaf ilayh, to become the ta'keed, the emphasizing word. Now the mubtada is compounded with emphasis, kulluhu. So the mu'akkad plus ta'keed will become mubtada'un, and they'll leave the word mamlu'un to become the khabar. So here the mubtada is compounded with emphasis. So we can't say al-hawdu is mubtada and kulluhu is the khabar. No. That's why tarkeeb is important. So we understand that the mubtada is compounded with something and the khabar comes after. So in this case, the khabar is mamlu'un. So let's look at this again. Al-hawdu is mu'akkad, the emphasized word. Kulluhu, there's two words there. Mudaf ilayh becomes ta'keed, and that groups together to become mubtada'un, and mamlu'un is the khabar. And it becomes a sentence. Ismiyatun because started with a noun. Al-hawdu khabriyatun because it is informative. So we have got quite a few more tarkeebs of mubtada left. There's about 45 different constructs. So inshallah, it'll take a few lessons, inshallah, to cover all the other constructs of mubtada. So that's enough for today. If you do have any questions, inshallah, you can ask through the Telegram support group. Okay, and inshallah, we'll be happy to help you, inshallah. For now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.